was your childhood like?
It was a good childhood. I lived in a rural town. It was very safe. It was just one of those places where you just felt secure. My childhood was very much a case of I was living with my parents, very supporting and loving mum and dad. Still do. And I had an older brother. I still have an older brother. He's a fair bit older than me. So we're talking 11 years. So if you can imagine it, when I was 6, 7, he's 17 or 18. So he's not particularly around much. He's not wanting to hang around with a child. The big thing for me was when I was 3, I had to have a kidney operation. And basically, long story short, your kidney has like a tube that runs through the middle of it. And mine had a kink in it. So it wasn't working properly. And I think now, had you had to have an operation for it now, you would have little keyhole surgery, whereas this was in the 80s. And so I had to have full sort of opening up of the side, which meant I had these large, ferociously red and then pink scars. Because it was such a big ordeal, I think that everyone was worried about me. Everyone wanted to make sure that I didn't hurt myself, that I didn't do too much. So school was difficult in that respect because I couldn't do as much as everybody else because everyone was worried that I might hurt myself or anything. So I did feel a little bit sort of wrapped in cotton wool, and it kind of made me feel sort of vulnerable, and I guess just felt a little bit broken, which I guess didn't really sort of help my sort of self-esteem really. My childhood, it was a weird childhood because I still think that I've got, or even had as a child, a very much like a philosophical mind, where I contemplated things. And as a kid, I was contemplating things that I probably shouldn't have even been thinking about. And a lot of that sort of revolved around death, and the thought of people dying or being left dead somewhere and what happens. And this is not the sort of thing that a child needs to be thinking about. And I think I just felt like my brain didn't quite match everybody else's who was around at the time. I also had a bout of what it's been later sort of called Truman syndrome, which, if you don't know what that is, it's taken after the film, the Truman Show, where basically you feel like you're being watched as almost like entertainment, and you're there for the view of everyone else and for their entertainment. And I used to get sort of paranoid about it and thinking that, you know, things that would happen to me were because this creator has designed this for me to go through, either for me to suffer or for me to sort of have these unusual scenarios I would find myself in. And so that was something that followed me around for a long time. I certainly don't want to paint out that my childhood was bad. It certainly wasn't. I enjoyed my childhood. I guess I just think I was just very lonely. As I said, my older brother wasn't interested, and I had very few friends. So I spent a lot of time in my head and just having to come up with my own entertainment. And sometimes that just sort of took itself down alleyways that maybe it shouldn't have done.
Was mental health something that was discussed when you was a child?
Not really. I think my dad suffered with it, and his side of the family certainly did. But I think where what it was is that I think you know, a parent, when their child is down or unhappy, all you want to do is just make them sort of happy again. So whether it was through toys or play or something like that, that was the result of it. And I don't think really mental health came into it until till I was in my 20s. Until then, it wasn't like it was a dirty word. Just wasn't discussed about, and I don't know. I think through sort of best intentions, it just it wasn't looked into because, oh, if you're down, don't worry about it. You know, let's focus on the positive things, and then that. As for the person with mental health problems, that's not something that can really sort of help.
What was school like for you?
I didn't particularly like school. Um, I was very good at school, so I was always intelligent, and again, like I would see things outside the box and think about things empathetically. But in terms of being at school, I was exceptionally tall for my age. I was also very large for my age, well, at least compared to everyone else. So, as you would expect with um, school, a lot of teasing, a lot of bullying, um, and that in itself can just make school miserable. And it just meant that I didn't particularly want to go. I seem to recall sort of many a time where I just wanted to be ill so that I didn't have to go in. Because just sort of having to sort of come across that again each day. And to be fair, it never really went. It sort of carried on until the older that I got. And you would think, you know, if you got somebody who's as big as they are and whatnot, that you'd be able to sort of protect yourself. But I didn't really do anything. I wasn't a fighter. I'm still not. But it wasn't the best. I mean, I did well. I did well with my learning and with my grades, but the experience itself, I mean, nobody was kind of really that interested into me. I had a small friendship group, but no sort of like girlfriends or anything like that because they just nobody was interested in that respect.
Were you able to go to anyone at school to talk?
No, because I think this has only become more of a modern thing where people talk about mental health. It wasn't even discussed when I was at school that there is such thing as mental health. I think that had there been, I might have gone in there and spoken to someone. But it was, you know, a lot of people. It was the way it was at the times. You know, you got on with your work. If you were bullied, you told a teacher. But anything outside that sort of remit, no one was really interested. And I'd like to hope that things have changed now because that would have been a tool that would have been so helpful for me. And unfortunately, I didn't have it.
How did depression affect you on a daily basis?
I think that if you haven't got depression, it's hard to really empathise with what it's like and what it means to have it. For me, I've always likened it to a storm. So you feel it coming, and then you're very much in it, and it's all consuming. It's all around you, and it kind of affects everything. I think a lot of people say that it's very much like the colours of life are taken out and they're replaced with greys. So where things you found joy, it's not there anymore. And I'm somebody who struggled with it. So instead of seeing the positive in something, I tend to focus on the negative of it, and very sort of self-deprecating, still very much like annoyed at myself or not confident in myself. There was a lot of times that I didn't want to be around. Felt ashamed of myself, just incompatible with everyone else. Something that I've always felt, and I know other people have felt this as well, and it's something that I I have struggled with quite a few times is feeling like I'm from a different time. So a time that's more simple, not so fast paced, because so many things just throw me off and confuse me or just upset me. But for me, it's just crippling. Get lethargic. Don't want to get out of bed. Don't want to do anything. Don't want to speak to anyone. I just continuously feeling worthless about myself, and especially as a man as well, because a lot of the men that I seemed to be around, as much as they were probably hiding it, they all seemed very much like they knew what they were doing. They had everything to plan, and I always felt like a loose end that didn't really know what I was doing. And it was horrible, really, because when you feel sort of out of place or out of sync with everybody else, you don't feel like you belong. And so that's why I felt that it would be better that I didn't belong, that I went somewhere else, that I wasn't here anymore, because obviously I wasn't meant to be here the same as everybody else. It's just a crippling illness. It would make me not want to do things. I wouldn't participate in anything. I very rarely made friends because I didn't know what to say or how to be. Um, it's just something that was debilitating, and for anyone who has had it or does have it, they know what that's like.
Has it affected your relationship so far?
Yes. Um, I had a bit of a sort of a checkered kind of history with it. So my first serious relationship, I was physically abused in that. Um, it was one of those things where no one was really wanting to think about it, or how could I tell someone? Because me, as big as I was, and her, as tiny as she was, um, who would believe, in my mind, who would believe that I was on the receiving end of this? Um, it was mostly kind of slaps around the face. And I think the big occasion that happened was I was at a friend's birthday party, and we was all playing a game. There was quite a few of us in this room, and I remember making a comment, a sort of a jokey comment about her, and she full on slapped me around my face in front of everyone, and it just made everyone sort of as it happened, and I felt so embarrassed and ashamed and everything. And it was this whole idea of, I do this because I love you, which I couldn't fathom in my head, because I'd always been someone who wanted to treat someone right, and I couldn't see how doing this to someone is going to help. Um, it affected my other relationships, because if something wasn't quite right, I would very much go in my own shell. I wouldn't talk. I'd assume the worst. So if we've had an argument, that's it. Um, didn't always feel like I didn't know why they were with me, because I'm so awkward and not like everybody else, some like how they could be with somebody else. Um, it also affected my marriage, because it it meant that I was um, affected in lots of different ways. One of the big ways that I'm affected is my libido. So therefore, I don't particularly feel that, well, in my mind, don't particularly feel the same as everybody else. So then that then becomes a problem, or that did become a problem in my marriage. And that's hard for a man to sort of be able to think that, and just to feel like that you're not the same as everybody else. But yeah, I would just find myself just kind of like shying away, and just retreating back into my shell, and then, because it just felt that, it'd be better that they didn't speak to me.
What would you say was the lowest point you've reached mentally?
My marriage was going particularly rocky for various reasons, and I remember driving home from work. It was about a 40-minute drive from work to home, and I was driving down this dual carriageway. And I remember driving along and thinking to myself and trying to look at all the different things that were coming past, and I wanted to pick something in my head, like a tree or something that I wanted to drive into, because I just wanted to end it there. And I think that was the closest I've ever come to actually doing something about it. It um, it really was the freshest I've ever felt about it. And what was good was that I had enough strength in me to be able to pull over, phone the Samaritans, and to basically say, this is what I've just thought, and I was going to do it. I need some help. That was my lowest point. By this point, I'd got two very young children, and a lot of people will say, well, how could you think of something like that when you've got two young children? And the truth is that when you're in that moment, you feel like, and this is where I get annoyed about people who say this about people who've ended their own life. It's, you don't think of things the same as everybody else. So I would think of it as that my children would be better off without me. They wouldn't want me around. I'm just a big disappointment. They'd be better off just with their mum and someone else. And that's the thought about it, is that everyone is better off without you, not being around. And so actually you kind of feel like you're doing them a favor, as opposed to making a big scene or something like that. It's almost like a last act of love, by taking yourself out of the situation and just making life supposedly easier for everybody else. I remember coming back and I'd been to the doctor. The Samaritans had told me to go to the doctors, and they'd called my wife. They'd called my wife to tell them that I'd had essentially a breakdown, and I remember coming home and my wife was angry at me because I hadn't phoned her, instead of just being supportive about the fact that I've just had a breakdown. She was angry at me, and then just didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. And so that caused then like other things to go on. So something I have done is sort of other things to sort of punish myself, really.
What went through your mind when you wanted to end it all?
I thought my two girls would be better without having somebody who I thought was mentally as broken as I was. I thought my wife would be better off without me. I felt very low about my whole outlook on life, what was happening with my job. And I didn't feel like I was being a particularly good parent either. So I just felt ashamed at myself of just being these different things.
Have you ever acted out on your negative thoughts?
Yes. So there've been a couple of times when I've self-harmed, and I'm fully aware that this is part of the problem. I'm fully aware that there's a possibility that this might get bleeped out, or it might just come to an end because I've said that term. And this is what frustrates me, because it's the whole act was me doing it to myself in secret, because the whole thing's a secret, and if we're having words that are bleeped out or starred out, it's just reinforcing that thought that this is something that shouldn't be talked about. This is something that should be kept quiet. And I think, I mean, I know that it's coming from a good place, but I find it, I just find it not helpful for the cause. So there's been a couple of times when I've cut myself. So I'd cut myself in the arm. And one particular time I'd had a meltdown about something, and I can't even remember what it was about, but I remember getting a pair of sharp scissors and just cutting down my arm. And I remember having to go to the hospital just with it down my arm and just upset. And I still remember my dad coming up to A&E to come see me, and I felt so ashamed for him to come in there and see me like that. Because it was, no one wants the dad to come and see them in hospital like that, and just upset and can't cope with anything. The thing with it is that it doesn't make things better, but it's just a way of punishing yourself for being what you consider to be so pathetic. But it's not just the physical way that I've done it. I've done it in other ways which people don't even realise is the same thing. So I've purposely shut myself away from people and not communicated, moving away from social interaction, because I just wanted to punish myself by not acting like I normally was, like not eating or not drinking or not sleeping properly or not speaking to anyone. I mean, it's fortunate that it's something that I haven't done, especially physically, for a few years now. And but it has cropped up in my head a few times since then. That this idea of just punishing yourself for not being what you think you should be.
Do antidepressants help at all with your mental health?
That depends. So when it comes to antidepressants, for a start, you've also got to get the right one. So I've been through 3 different antidepressants. The first one, I can't remember what it was. It was one that just had no effect whatsoever. The second one had an effect, but it only lasted for a very short while. And then I've been on this third particular stronger one. It helps in the respect of it stops the high highs and the low lows, so it kind of balances you out. But in the same respect, you then don't feel the high highs as you once did. So when you used to get really excited about something, or you used to be really keen to do something, you couldn't care. So you do feel a little bit zombie-like. And also bearing in mind, when you're trying to find the right medication, you're still experiencing the problems that you've got at the time. So until you find the right one, you're still going through this depression. And but then it's something that, my medication that I have, it gives me horrible dreams. It makes me just feel numb about things that I shouldn't feel numb about. And I mean, yeah, without it, it probably would have been horrendous. But it was necessary. But I don't think long term it's the right thing.
Do you think poor mental health is something that is common in men?
I think it is. I don't think it is. I know it is. Having worked in the funeral industry, we were forever seeing men come in with because they had ended it all, of varying ages, from young to old. It's getting worse. I'm still working in the industry, speaking to people who are in it, and they're noticing a huge increase in it, and not just people who are doing it quickly, people who are doing it extremely graphically and painfully. I only had someone tell me the other week about someone who'd walked into the middle of the road and set themselves on fire, which, you know, my mind boggles. What a good friend of mine, her brother ended his life, and he didn't like hang himself or anything like that. He used a knife and really sort of tortured himself, basically. So we're not just seeing the huge numbers; we're also seeing the level of pain that people are trying to put themselves in as well. I think there's factors in it. You mentioned earlier about what was the lowest point in my life. Well, another one of mine was having this realization in my marriage that if I stayed in it, I was probably more than likely going to not be alive anymore. But my alternative was to leave the marriage and therefore leave my 2 children. And to this day, that is still something that haunts me, and it's very much something that a man would do. So they leave the family home because then they don't get the children. And so I'd gone from going from seeing my children every day to not seeing them. And so I would watch videos of my girls, and I'd be in floods of tears, because I'd also felt guilty that I'd left them, because of my own mental health, and it was very hard to have to be in that situation and to spend the next however many years seeing them when I can, watching videos, because that's the only contact that I have. And so I can see when men, when their marriages or their relationships break up, and especially if they got children, that they can't deal with it, because I something that I think that society doesn't realise, and they haven't seemed to have got it into their head, is that fathers love their children just as much as mothers. And that was something that severely affected my mental health, not being around my kids, and having to leave them. And I can understand that this is something that men deal with, and it's not the only reason. There's financial pressures for men. There's societal things. There's more things for men now, but it wasn't that long ago that there wasn't anything for men. There's always been lots of things for women to go to, but men now, is suicide, if that's allowed to be said, if that's allowed not to be bleeped out or starred out, is the biggest killer of men under 40. And I think it's now becoming the first for under 50 as well. And yet there's no questioning about, well, why? And if there is, there's no questioning of well, what are we going to do about it? All that people will just say is, well, men need to talk more. And yes, they do. And I agree they do, because I think men do keep it in. But I also think people need to listen more and listen better and keep asking, because we've seen a lot of people who've lost their dad, brother, son, uncle, friend, because, oh yeah, they were fine. And then next thing they're gone, and then, oh well, they seemed okay, and you're like, well, obviously they weren't. And were you listening? And if you, I know some people hide it very well, but I think that more money needs to be put into this, because more and more family members are losing their male influence in the families.
Why do you think men suffer the most with it?
It's societal. Men are always meant to be seen as the strong ones, the brave ones, the courageous ones, and it's just not seen as the thing to do to sort of accept that you've got, and I'm going to say, you have got something wrong with you. It's mental health is now being passed under, oh, it's just a natural thing that people get. It's not. It's something that's not right, because people don't end up in body bags because everything's fine. You know, this is just a normal medical thing. It's not okay. And men need to be better at looking after themselves, because at the moment, the way that it's going is it's to have something that's not even biological in terms of like cancer or heart attacks or strokes or something like that. It's something that people do to themselves is the biggest killer of men, and we're losing our men. And I think, you know, men need to start maybe just being a bit more selfish and looking after themselves and each other, I think. And that is why I wanted to do my YouTube channel as well, because I wanted to give a male perspective to things, and including this sort of mental health side of things as well.
What helped you with your mental health?
So I think obviously antidepressants did take the edge off. For me, it was counselling I had. I do think, though, you have to get the right counsellor, because I've had counselling in the past and it didn't really feel any progression for me. I've had counselling with somebody else and it was like light bulb moments for me. I think you know, just trying to put things in perspective helps. What also helped me a lot was this thought of depression is separate from me. It doesn't make me. So I would think of it as, oh, well, you know, we're having another wave of this, because it would come in waves. So if I feel it coming on, to be able to sit and think about it in the appropriate way and think, oh, well, we've got another bout coming on. Okay, well, all I've got to do is just grin and bear it, ride it out, because I know I'm going to come out the other side. So it was about having things in mind, like telling my other half, do you know what, I'm really going through it at the minute, so I'm just going to have some time by myself. That really helped. And also having encouragement from people, checking in frequently with me. How are you doing today? How are you doing today? Because I think just asking once and then just leaving it, in a way, it makes the person then think, oh, well, they're not that bothered because they haven't carried on asking me. But a very sort of supportive network, very supportive family, very supportive partner. What also helped me was, and this is going to be something that I think people would find very difficult. One thing that helped me a lot was I got rid of social media. I found myself getting more depressed looking at social media about what people were doing, all the fun things they were doing at a time when I had no money, and all people are going on holidays and they're doing this. And I quit December last year and I felt so much better, and I do feel so much better about it. I also have let go of people who were close to me, who I felt weren't helping me. So I had a best friend who I had since I was 13 up until a couple of years ago. And so we'd gone through so much together, but by the end, it became very apparent that he was only interested in himself. He wasn't interested in how I was doing. He wasn't interested in my daughters. He was very sort of self-absorbed. And he had mental health problems, so I would make sure he was okay, and I would go around and look after him and other stuff. But then when it was my turn, it was radio silence and then just more messages about things he'd done in his day. So I cut the tie, and that was one of the difficultest thing I've done. Because you got somebody who you'd been very good friends with for 9 on 30 years, and you just cut that off. But to this day, I still feel like I did the best thing. And I think just surrounding myself with people who matter has helped me.
Why are you deciding to do this video?
I don't think there's enough people talking about it from a male perspective. I think the more people who have mental health concerns need to speak up about it, give ideas. I'm on this Mounjaro sort of community in this journey, and everyone's quite happy to chip in with things, but I find it's a little bit quiet with other areas. So I've also been on like men's mental health groups, and then it just, as usual, things start going toxic because it starts going away from the reason you're there, and it starts going to other areas, and then this person's against this person. And I just want people to maybe just be a bit kinder to themselves, a bit kinder to each other, to take on things that I've said. I mean, there's so many things that I could have gone into that I haven't, but I want people to be able to watch this video and know, do you know what, you can go through all this and you can come out the other side. And there I am, I'm here, I've got my children still, I've got my partner, I've got the house, I've got my pets. It's, you know, and yeah, the more I hear about people who have ended their life, the more I'm thinking I'm still here. And I think people just need to recognize, you know what, I need to stay here, or I need to talk, or I need to speak to someone about this.
What advice would you give to men suffering from dark thoughts?
Reach out, speak to people. Nobody's going to judge. If anything, the more I spoke about it, the more I kind of thought to myself, why didn't I do this sooner? And it was something that I think people don't think about doing. They don't want to look weak in front of their friends and so on. So what? If your friends are with you, they'll be with you. If they're not, cut them off. If family members aren't with you on it, cut them off, because all you need around you is that reinforcement to help you get through. People like myself are always around to talk. You want to find people who are empathetic to it, or have at least gone through it, because what we all have as people with mental health problems, we all have a shared experience of what that's like, and it's hard to have it with somebody who can't fathom what that must feel like. And for however bad you feel, think about how the people will feel if you're not around anymore. And I know I said you don't feel like that, but I'm telling you now, from someone who sees the other side of it, the hurt that's left behind, you just transfer it to somebody else. The pain that you have, it doesn't go with you. It transfers to your family and friends, and then they're left wondering why, and that could they have done something. So just reach out and just have some strength.